Hey guys, Patriot coming to you from the desktop with another light review. We've kind of been on a roll with the lights here, and I'm pretty excited to do this review because it's a impressive product. I'll tell you right off the bat. What you're looking at in front of us here is a RC40 review sample. This came from Fenix. They were gracious enough to send this out to me, and it actually came wrapped in an outer box as well, so the wrapping was outstanding. Let's go ahead and just crack this open. This packaging that you're seeing is actually going to be different than the retail version. The retail version is going to have all of the Fenix labeling and everything on it. You can see it's got foam on all sides, all corners here. Pull the light out like this. Heavy plastic case here. You can see this is all cushioned. I guess I needed to have the camera further back there. But very nice packaging. I appreciate these companies who put some thought into that. And Fenix owners will recognize this. It came with the TK41s and 40s and TK75s, the familiar clear box here. And inside, you can see a gorgeous light there. I guess that's pretty subjective, but you can see that it's packaged nicely. Again, this one's going to be packaged a little bit differently than the production one or the retail version. The retail version is actually going to have a shoulder strap that attaches to the light as well. Let's just go ahead and take this out. You can see in here we have a 12-volt charging cable. We've got a couple of extra O-rings and a little battery plug cover in there. Great that they think of that. I love it that they're being proactive because parts have a way of breaking, especially little O-rings. And you can see here's the AC charger in two sections. This little plug connector plugs in there. Seems like it's nice and tight, like it's not going to come out, so good job there, Fenix. Let's go ahead and get this stuff out of the way for the time being, and we'll cover that in a little bit. This is the kind of case that you can actually keep putting the light back into to transport it because it's going to protect it really well. There's not any padding in there, but as far as protecting it from scuffs, abrasions, that sort of thing, really awesome case. I mean, you can see the reinforcement in this thing. It's built really well. Good job, Fenix. Alright, I did want to talk Fenix history a little bit, but we'll put that on the back burner for now and get this light up in front of you where you can get a good look at it. You can see it's a pretty beefy looking light. I think it's actually an elegant looking light, but I've had time to test this thing out, and it seems that the form follows the function very closely. A lot of people don't like this abrupt step here where the handle ends and the head extends straight out from there. They think it should be more gradual, but there's reasons that they didn't do that, and we'll get to that when we start talking about thermal properties. You can see it's got two switches on this light. A lot of heat fins on there, big, thick, robust heat fins. These are not going to dent or crush. You can see that the back fin is actually thicker than the 1, 2, 3, 4 other fins in there. It's got a bead blasted, and somehow they've darkened this or added like a phosphor finish, and you'll notice as compared to the one on the TK75 that it's a little bit more subdued. I think that's cool. You can see on the front end of the light here we've got 4 huge reflectors. These are not quite as deep as the TK70 reflectors, but there are 4 of them and 4 XML U2 LEDs down in there. If we take a close look at the reflector, you can see that it doesn't have a lot of artifacts, little imprecise molding or machining marks in there. Everything's very smooth and glassy on this reflector. Kind of what I've come to expect from Fenix. They do a really good job. For instance, if you take a SR95, the current SR95, that reflector is pretty raw looking as compared to the original reflector in the SR90 or some of these Fenix lights. They could definitely improve the throw a bit more if they would give that reflector a bit more attention in the O light. You can see it's got all the markings on it here, the hot. It's got a little serial number here. It looks like this one's number 51 and RC40 marked right here. You can see it doesn't have a huge amount of texturing like you would see on a light like the O light where it's got the big blocks on it. I find that so far it has not been slippery. It seems to work pretty good. It is non-directional. You can see that it's pretty symmetrical as far as the pattern goes. It does have these machined flats on it, 6 of them in total, and that kind of figures into the dimensions of the handle depending on how we measure it. In fact, let's go ahead and talk about that right now really quick. You'll notice that on the TK75 here that the handle width is about 52 millimeters. And you'll have to look here because this one's going to be in inches, but we'll talk millimeters for now. About 52 millimeters in size. Depending on how we measure the RC40, it's actually narrower, well, in both respects. So the widest point of the RC40 is right at about 50 millimeters. If I measure from flat to flat, so we've got opposing flats on the light, it's actually right about 48 millimeters. Again, we're looking right up here. About 48 millimeters. So it is a thinner handle than the TK75. In fact, if you try to take the battery pack out of the TK75 and put it inside the RC40 here, it doesn't work. It will not drop in. That's because the battery pack in the TK75 uses a carrier and the RC40 doesn't. So this carrier actually takes up some space down the center here, and the cells don't actually all touch each other. In the RC40, it uses a proprietary battery pack with 6 18650 cells that allows the cells to be a little bit closer together and actually makes the handle smaller in dimension overall. Okay, we will get back to that battery pack and I'll show you that proprietary system that they're using. Let's go ahead and talk about the role of this flashlight, or what it is designed for Fenix. This is Fenix's newest large format LED searchlight. Previously they had the light called the TK70, and the main difference in the TK70, if I can fit the whole thing in frame, is that it uses a D cell format. In order to run this light on turbo, or its highest output mode, you actually have to run an extender on here so that you're running an entire 4 cells. Now you can't just run any cells with this light. If you put 4 alkaline batteries in there, again, you cannot run it on high, because it doesn't. The 4 alkaline D cells don't deliver the current necessary to run these 3 XML LEDs. You can see just how deep those reflectors are. So a little deeper reflector than the newest replacement, the RC40. So you have to run this flashlight on 4 nickel metal hydride D cells. You're going to get into recharging nickel metal hydride Ds. If you don't have those already, you're going to have to get a separate charger and feed this D batteries. So not the worst thing in the world. The nice thing about this light is that it has a very simple user interface, uses a common type cell. Now in an emergency, or if you just don't care about running high output, you could always run an alkaline cell in this and it would suffice for a lot of lower light tasks. I can't imagine owning this light and not being able to run it on turbo, so I suspect most of the people who have purchased this light have done the right thing and gone and purchased the nickel metal hydride batteries for it. Not really a big deal in itself to run a certain battery. We run into all sorts of lights these days. Obviously it's probably gone over to 18650 format versus a D cell, which is a little bit old school, but it's nice for the old school guy that's got a lot of mag lights. Maybe he's already got nickel metal hydride D cells, but for a lot of people today, the cell format has changed, as I mentioned, to 18650s and other lithium-ion cells instead of nickel metal hydride when it comes to these top-performing LED flashlights with multiple LEDs. The other thing that just made this light not an option for me, not a viable option, is just the overall length, the size of this light. It's a beast. I mean, the thing, it goes out of frame. It's about the size of a 5D mag light. To me, this is the kind of light that a farmer, somebody with a lot of property, could use from his front porch, get around the property. You know, it's not going to be a big deal carrying this around on several acres, but it's not going to be a hiking light. You're not going to go walk the dog with this. I suppose that you could, but I would argue that there's a lot better options than taking this light along. So the biggest things, the biggest advantage of this one in the past was that it would run D-cell batteries. It's 2200 lumens, and it had pretty good throw. I think they listed the throw at 130,000 candela on this light, which in my testing seems to be right about on. Now you can see here by going to the RC40 that we have gone to a larger handle. If I put them this way, you can kind of see the difference there in the size. But you can see the extra girth here of the handle, and the reason for that is because we've got 618 650s in a proprietary pack with this handle. However, it's still not to the point of being uncomfortable. I would imagine that anyone who's going to use this in an extended field operation of some type, they're going to be running a lanyard on this, or a shoulder strap. Some of the early problems with the shoulder strap, or some of the complaints with the early shoulder strap on the TK70, were that it was a metal attachment point right here. I don't have the strap on, obviously, but it actually scratched the flashlight in use. So somebody who wants what we call a shelf queen and likes to collect flashlights and just use them lightly and keep them looking nice and new, they probably wouldn't want to attach that. I don't know what the shoulder strap is going to consist of on the RC40 because I didn't have a shoulder strap, but you can see that it does have 3 attachment points here on the head, here, here, and here. It probably doesn't look like anything will fit in there because it looks like the heat fin behind is so close that you couldn't get it in there. But if you look this way, there's plenty of room to run paracord or whatever the attachment system is going to be. I already started experimenting with a couple different things when I was testing this light and hiking with it out in the desert, and I've just been using paracord, 2 strands of paracord like you saw on my old SR90 review. In any case, it seems like it's working pretty good, and the flashlight isn't real heavy. This light comes in at 2.88 pounds, or 46.2 ounces, or 310 grams, and it was exactly 310 grams on my scale. So kind of nice to see that Fenix issues these specifications and they turn out to be reality. It's great when they don't cheat on weight or lumens or anything. Everything that I've tested on this light so far, it's either met or exceeded expectations, so I've been pretty impressed with it. Okay, getting back to the design of this flashlight with its abrupt stop up here where you see the heat fins protruding right from the battery tube. If they would have made this more gradual like they did on the SR90, you can see how the length of the head would have increased substantially. What they wanted to do, the idea was with Fenix, evidently, this is my guess, they wanted to make the head just deep enough to house the reflectors and get a few heat fins behind it. In testing, this light actually managed to stay on for a very long time, over 45 minutes, on turbo, or its highest mode. Some people are incorrectly referring to this light on different reviews as a burst mode. It really is not a burst mode. In fact, even Fenix is using the verbiage turbo. It actually will sustain a constant turbo mode with this amount of head mass. So the idea here, they didn't need to make the head larger for more heat sink in order to let the or allow the light to run longer on turbo. It just wasn't necessary. The head design that they came up with allowed it to be short enough while still providing the thermal mass to pull the heat out of those LEDs and to keep them within a reasonable operating temperature. Okay, I'll spare you my handwriting, but I will read a couple of my notes here. In a 66-degree ambient temperature test sitting in still air on the desktop here, there was no active cooling. At 15 minutes, this warmed up to 117 degrees. I heard a small ping or a click inside of the light, and I thought, oh, did it just step down? Checked the light meter, and it was still at full blast. At 18 minutes, it was 122 degrees. Heard another little slight ping or a click, and again the light meter didn't budge, so I knew it was still producing, it was still on turbo. And at 20 minutes and 15 seconds, again I heard a cling, a little tick, like a little ping in here, and I thought, was that it stepping down? Well, all those little pings and clicks turned out to just be thermal expansion, and I don't know where that was occurring. It might have been between the bezel and the head. By the way, the bezel stainless steel, very nicely machined out, as you can see, and nicely grayed. I love that. And so yeah, it turned out that the little noises were nothing more than thermal expansion, and it could have been either the lens up here expanding against the head, or within the bezel, or against this reflector outer surround. Don't really know what it was, but I haven't heard it since then. So it was kind of like the first time I turned it on and or really got into the heat test, it did that, but I guess everything's settled in since then. In about 25 minutes it was 137 degrees, and at 30 minutes it was 144. At 35 minutes it was 147 degrees, and I was measuring it with the infrared thermometer right against this portion of the light here. That seems to be where it gets the hottest, right here at the second heat fin, and then right here at the base. So I was always measuring from the hottest exterior portion of the light. Now mind you, the exterior portion of the light is probably going to be a little bit cooler than what's going on inside. The closer you get to those LEDs and the heat sink, whatever they're mounted to in there, whether it's a brass, an aluminum, or a copper plate, I don't know, but the further into the interior of the light you get, the hotter the temperatures are going to be. So remember, I'm measuring exterior temperatures. At 37 minutes it was 148 degrees, and that's where my notes ended here, and I actually posted the other ones online on the RC40 thread in Candle Power forums. If you get a chance, you might go over there for more details and beam shots, which I've already posted. I actually ended the test at about 45 minutes and 150 degrees and let the light cool down. I actually put it in front of a fan to let it cool down, and when I did that, a little bit of condensation, a small condensation patch, formed on the inside of the lens. Now some other owners of the TK75 have complained about that a little bit, but mostly that's been more of the colder weather states. Now I'm out here in Arizona, so that's really not an issue out here. I suspect that whatever the atmosphere, that when they sealed the light and closed this thing up, there might have been a little bit of moisture or humidity in there, and I suspect that it can escape somewhere, but it hasn't fogged up since that first time. Immediately after that, after the light cooled down, I ran another test about 50 minutes long. Same thing, got it up to 155 or 150 degrees exterior temperature, and by that time I had the blinking indicator showing me that I was below 20% left on the battery, so I shut things down and at that point went and charged it up. The biggest takeaway I would say came from my thermal testing was that, in a way, I didn't throw the worst case scenario at it, because it's not that hot here yet. I wasn't helping it out any. I wasn't actively cooling it with a fan. If you were walking with this flashlight in your hand, there'd be air passing over it. Some of the transfer of heat would be going into your hand, into your bloodstream, and carried away. This was just sitting here on the desk. It's 66 degrees Fahrenheit, which was the test standard. It's pretty close to the 70 degrees that a lot of other testing goes on at. So it wasn't giving it a big help there. And the light ran in turbo mode, which is 3,500 lumens in this monster machine, and it did not step down even after 50 minutes. Now you can see here from the instructions on the part that is labeled overheat protection, it says, as a high-performance lighting instrument, the RC40 will accumulate a lot of heat when it is working at the turbo 3,500 lumen output. When overheating is detected, the flashlight will automatically drop down into the high brightness level. You can resume turbo brightness operation again when the light's temperature drops to a safer level. Now, I was not able to get the light to step down to a safer level, which in this case would be level 4, also known as high in this particular light. You'll see me refer to those daily modes as L1, L2, L3, L4. It just simplifies things versus saying eco, low, mid, high, turbo. I just think it's easier to say L1 through 4 and then turbo. My light did not step down. Perhaps it would have if I just kept the light running and maybe the temperature was a little bit warmer. So, you know, I haven't run a more abrupt test than that. The light was awfully hot on the outside, but there was 0 lumen drop. I mean, the thing was still cranking out like crazy. Really impressive thermal management. It seems like they've scaled this head to be just large enough to handle the heat generated by these 4 big XML LEDs without the light frequently stepping down. So I would imagine that a person, especially using this in the summertime, if it was sitting in a garage illuminating a work area or something like that, that the light would probably step down. But in application, in walking, in actual use, moving this light, just the action of air passing over the head is going to keep this light to a fairly manageable level. Alright, let's go ahead and move over to the tail cap side here. You can see it does have a connection there to charge the batteries. Again, it is a rechargeable flashlight, proprietary pack. When I push this button here, you can see all 4 LEDs illuminate. When all 4 LEDs are lit, it's saying that you have more than 80% of battery life in the light. When 3 are lit, more than 60%, 2 are lit, more than 40%, and when 1 is lit, it means that you're down to your last 20% of battery, and it will actually start blinking when it gets that low, just as it did in my second thermal test. So it seems pretty accurate as far as the run times go. I haven't done precise run times on any level other than turbo, and we'll talk about that here in just a minute. You can see I actually reached down and clicked the light on. This is its lowest mode, or L1. They call it in the instructions Eco mode, which is 35 lumens. You can see those step through, and we're going to get to the user interface. I know that a lot of people turn in just to see how that works. This isn't your quick review, guys. If you're looking for a quick review without a lot of detail, you want to wait for Marshall or somebody else to do a review on this light. You just have to be patient or use the fast forward button with my reviews. Alright, getting back to the tail end here. One thing I noticed about these threads on this light, they are slick, super smooth. Haven't touched them. I've put no lube on this light at all. It came right from Fenix just like this. A bit of a long thread. That will help with its water resistance a bit. You can see it has 3 contacts in here that are slightly sprung. Real nice threads, have not touched them. I love being able to take a flashlight right out of the pack and start using it. You know, unpackage the thing and start using it and enjoying it. Here's the back end of the battery. Alright, set that aside a minute. I want to show you the inside of the tube. You can see 3 contacts down inside. Obviously the center of the battery is going to be the positive terminal, and the outside here is the negative, and it's going to correspond with those 3 pins, just like here on the tail cap. Let's go ahead and give you a nice close-up here of the threads, if we can do that. Okay, you can see that it is a square profile thread, but it's a micro square profile thread. It's a very fine square thread, but man, is it smooth and accurate. They did a really nice job at all of the cuts and machining on this light. Really impressed with it. I'll show you the battery here. They call it their ARB-L3 C18650cc rechargeable lithium ion battery pack. If we kind of divide that out, it would mean that they are using 2600 milliamp hour 18650 cells in there. That's a decent capacity for an 18650. However, these days we've got a lot of 2900, 3100, even 3400 milliamp hour cells that you see me use in other packs. I would like to see Fenix upgrade their cells at least to 3100 milliamp hour cells. That's going to improve the battery life and overall light performance. So maybe in the future we will see that. I don't know what's actually going to ship with the production lights. Perhaps this is just the battery that they are using in a sample light. So we'll watch and see what comes from them. Although I do believe the current advertising does display a 7800 milliamp hour pack. Now, with regards to the battery pack versus a battery carrier like you see here in the Fenix. Okay, there's a battery carrier in the Fenix. A lot of people, especially the enthusiasts over on Candle Power forums, they like to be able to use their own custom cells, and it doesn't bother them to, to remove these cells and charge them one at a time in a custom charger of some type. When it comes to the target audience of this light, when you start dealing with this many 18650 cells, there becomes a point, and I guess, maybe I'm a little bit biased here, but for me, that point is about 4 cells. When it comes to dealing with more than 4 cells, I don't want to take up 2 4-bay chargers to start, charging a light just because I've used it for, maybe I used it for 20 minutes and I want to top off my batteries. Every time I want to top off my batteries, I'm going to have to remove the carrier from the light, start removing the batteries, putting them on chargers like the Nightcore i4. I've got 4 of those, or I've got 3 of those IntelliCharger i4 chargers, but and they work really good, but I sometimes just don't want the hassle. Now for me it's a preference, and for a lot of Candle Power Forum guys, it's a preference that that we would often rather have carriers than we would want to have a proprietary pack of some type. However, there is a safety issue, and when you start throwing this light out on the general market and you start multiplying these 18650 cells to an inexperienced user, it can actually get exponentially more dangerous the more cells. Now, all of these high quality cells have lots of protection built into them, but if not a safety concern, it becomes a chore to manage a small fleet of batteries. This one would take 6, you'd normally have a backup set, so that would be a small fleet of 12 18650 batteries at a minimum for the typical user, and where these things are sitting around, how they're stored, that type of thing. With this, it's all in one pack. So when it comes to a large format light like this and the target audience, which we haven't really touched on, but to me it's going to be, I can see a lot of these lights going to the professional, the first responder, the search and rescue, law enforcement, military, fire department, that type of thing. And when it comes to the military circles and police departments and that type of thing, if they have to do anything more than just plug in a device like this, the stuff is going to get lost, broken, it's going to fall out of maintenance, and it just becomes a chore for the department to manage something like this. So that's why Fenix, and I'm guessing, this is just my own take on this, decided to go with proprietary pack like this. If you look at the Olight X6, for instance, it's their own proprietary pack. If you look at these Polarian lights, it's a proprietary pack, but it makes sense. These happen to be 8 times 18650 lithium-ion cells, and you can see the difference there in battery packs. But very similar. This one has LED lights built into it, and you actually have to remove the tail cap to charge, unlike this one, which you can charge inside the light, which is kind of cool. So very well thought out. But when it comes, I'm just pointing out that when it comes to this style of light, it's not uncommon to see a proprietary pack. The enthusiasts and the hot rodders are always going to take issue with this. It's just the way that it is. But again, and that's fine, everyone has an opinion, but we need to keep in mind who the target audience is. Same thing here in the Polarian Abyss. It's just a little bit different shape. It's actually 8 wide 18650s in the Polarian. You can see it's a much shorter pack, but it's got 8 18650s in that pack. So this is a very standard way of doing it when it comes to these large format flashlights. Again, I did actually articulate my thoughts a little bit better over at the Candle Power Forum's RC40 thread that's rolling right now. I think it's about maybe 10 or 15 pages deep, but I did kind of talk about it in there. Capturing your thoughts on video with the camera running is always a little bit more difficult, but if you're looking for more detailed explanation, you might swing by over there and see what I had to write. I am just one little enthusiast among many. Let's go ahead and put the tail cap back on here. I don't know what the pricing is going to be on those battery packs. The nice thing about that style of particular pack is, as compared to the SR95, this one's an SR90, but the SR95 and its family of lights that take this battery pack, and I forget what they designate this pack, it also has 6 18650 batteries. When you buy a spare pack, you buy this entire handle. with its electronics in the back, the machining, the whole machine piece here with cells and everything. And I can't remember what these retail for, but it's not cheap. You're paying for a lot of machining that you're not going to have to pay for with the RC40. With the RC40, you've got a simple battery pack that is drop-in style. I also like it because as a system, when you're in the field, it's a lighter weight system. Sometimes a person might want to carry a spare battery pack, but you're carrying a lot of extra mass of aluminum with this style of pack than you would be with a simple battery pack itself. Alright, finally to a spot that a lot of you guys are waiting for. We'll just talk about the user interface really quick. It's very, very simple on this light. You've got two buttons. You have a power button up front here, and you have a mode selection button at the back. To turn the light on, simply push in the on-off button, and it has last mode memory. So wherever I turn this light off last time is the mode that it comes back on. You can see here that this is L1, or as Phoenix calls it, the Eco mode, and it's 35 lumens, and it will run for 160 hours. Mighty impressive runtime. So if you had to use this as a hurricane light and stand this up in a room during a storm, power outage, that type of thing, at 35 lumens, that's enough to light up a white ceiling, maybe an 8 to 10 foot ceiling, and actually read a manual from. I was doing it just the other night. Incredible runtime out of this light. Again, we've got 6 18650 batteries in there helping us to get to that remarkable number. Alright, if I hit the mode button here a second time, that's going to take us up to our L2, our number 2 level, and that's 150 lumens for 50 hours. So again, if maybe you don't need 160 hours worth of runtime in a storm, but you might need enough to get you through a couple of nights. 150 lumens at 50 hours, you've got several nights worth of high output light there. Hit it again, we're at level 3, which is 550 lumens for 15 hours. So that'll get you through at least a couple of evenings with some pretty insane output there. 550 lumens is more than enough to accomplish almost any task, depending on the size of the room that you're in. Obviously, if you're in a big ballroom or something, it's not going to have the same effect that it does in a standard, 10 by 10 or 15 by 15 foot bedroom. But if we hit it one more time, we're at level 4. Level 4 is our highest normal mode, short of turbo, and that'll give us 1500 lumens for 5 hours. So this might be the kind of mode that a search and rescue worker would utilize quite a bit. It keeps you off the turbo mode with a shorter runtime. This 1500 lumens at 5 hours is actually, it's a substantial amount of light with the amount of throw that this light actually has. Maybe a team that had some kind of an operation or something overnight, this light plus one extra battery running at 1500 lumens, it would take care of all of their needs as far as lighting goes. Now when you bump it up to turbo mode, which is L5 we'll call it, L5 is, as we mentioned earlier, 3500 lumens. You can feel a lot of heat coming off of the front of the light here. An incredible amount of throw at that 3500 lumens. It really is an impressive sight downrange to see output. And again, if you go to Kindle Power Forums, you'll see in the RC40 thread, I've got some beam shots that I was fairly happy with. And we compare it to the TK75 and SR90 and even some HID lights. Now in turbo mode, as long as you don't have a bump down, a thermal bump down, if this exceeds the maximum temperature, which I don't know what it is because it never occurred, you can continue to use that light up to an hour and 30 minutes at 3500 lumens. And that seems to be very, very close to what I got in my run test. In fact, mine actually exceeded that in a single run test of 136 minutes before it stepped down to level 4. So did really good there. I was impressed with it maintaining that output level for so long. Alright, in any of those output modes, let's just turn it back on here. We're on turbo right now. Let's just bump it down here to level 1, 35 lumens. If I push and hold the mode switch, it goes into strobe mode. Push it again and it comes out of strobe mode. Push and hold again, back in the strobe mode. And that will occur from any level, even if you were up here at turbo mode and push and hold, and it goes into, there's about a 1 second delay before it goes into strobe mode. But it is an especially annoying strobe. One thing I did forget to show you was this little flap right here, very similar to the SR90 as far as the way that it works. It does seem to have a better seal, a lot better seal than the SR90. I mean, you really have to wedge that thing in there. It's quite tight. If we plug in the AC adapter right here, you can see what the lights do. It cycles through them. When it gets to the end of its charge cycle, all of these stay lit continuously, and you know that you're done. Talking quickly about the anodizing of the light, again, this was a test sample, so there are some little tiny pin-sized marks that are missing a little bit of anodizing. You can see there as I was just handling the light, I inadvertently switched it on. That is possible with this light. And you can see right here and right here, just some small pieces of anodizing missing. Looking at their track record, if I look at the TK75, this thing was absolutely perfect and still is. I haven't put a mark on this. I'm typically pretty careful with the lights, but as you can see, this thing is still absolutely perfect. I imagine that you would expect no less from the RC40, and again, this is a test sample. It probably went through several hands before I actually had it at the factory testing, whatever, and so, you know, through use it's going to get little marks on it. The fact is, it is hard anodized or type 3 anodizing, so it's going to be very resistant to scuffs, scrapes, scratches, little marks, but in any case, I've been using this quite a bit, and I've put no new ones on it so far. So as long as you're not dropping the light or setting it on concrete and the thing's rolling around, you're probably not going to have any trouble. Speaking of rolling around, it does have 6 flats on the head, and so it does give you a pretty good amount of anti-roll feature there. So it does have an anti-roll head on it. It's obviously, if this got started downhill, it's going to keep going. But if you set it down on one of its flats here, it's typically going to stay there. If you set it on an incline and the thing was rolling at first, it's going to keep going. But as far as them incorporating that into the style of the head that they had to work with, I think they did a really good job. I think the light's attractive for what it is. One of the things that makes it attractive to me, the overall length. I don't like big, huge lights. Obviously, you know how I feel about the toilet plunger here. It's a big light, it's gangly, it's unconventional. I just don't like it. The SR90 here was a light that was fairly attractive to me. I realized that they were dealing with a pretty deep reflector here, and thus the head length and mass required to heat sink that big SST90 LED. But overall, this was something that I could use in the field as a large format LED light that could even replace HID in certain applications, especially where runtime was important. When I look at the RC40, it's more attractive. So maybe not the exact lines of this light as compared to this light, but I like the short format. This light is 299 millimeters in length. It's about just under 12 inches, 11.77 inches. Head diameter up here is 4.24 inches, or 108 millimeters, and that's measured on the outside of the light, the widest portion right here. And then the tube diameter, as we discussed, they say it's 54 millimeters. It actually isn't. Maybe if you measure it here at the widest point where the cap's a little bit bigger, or here at this larger ring, but that's typically not where you hold it. You're going to be holding it here on this portion with the traction, with your thumb reaching up here to the switches. So right here we're looking at 50 millimeters or 48 millimeters, depending on how you measure it. So in any case, we're probably looking at about 4 millimeters smaller than what they actually state it is. Alright, let's talk options briefly as possible. I could probably make my own video 5, 10, 15 minutes long just on options and different types of lights. But let's just talk about large format lights. The TK75 really isn't a large format light. It's a mid format. It's not a compact light like the TM26 or the Nida Eye or the TK15 or the TK11. Those are all compact lights. This is a mid-size light. The EA8 here is a mid-size light, but on a slightly different battery formula. We're talking large format. So here's the old large format light from Fenix. If you like to run D batteries, it's probably still a viable option. You're giving up some lumens as compared to the TK75 and the RC40, a substantial amount in that case. But if you want to run D batteries, it's one of your few options when it comes to high output LED lights. So it's still quite viable for a lot of people out there. The SR90 has now been produced in several versions. It's moved on to the SR95 and the SR95 UT Ultra Throw versions. When you go to the Ultra Throws, you're going to get more throw, less output, so less lumens. This particular example of SR90 is about 1600 lumens or so, based on where where my other lights test at. So with this light, it does pretty good with throw, right about 105 to 110 candela. The RC40 outperforms my particular SR90, and there's a wide variance of SR90s as far as the generations that they had and the type of emitters that they used. But this actually does throw a little bit better at 130,000 candela versus, again, as I mentioned, about 105, 110 candela out of this light. So not only does this light throw better than the SR90, again, the SR95 is going to come in very similar to the SR90 with regards to specifications, but it's producing a lot more light, 3,500 lumens as compared to anywhere from 1,600 to 2,000 lumens, depending on the SR95 or SR90 that we're talking about. There's other larger format like the Olight X6 out there with more LEDs, more lumens, a little bit less throw than this light actually, but due to smaller, shorter reflectors. But that's got an external battery pack connected by a cord, not really the easiest thing to use. Again, the form factor on this is one of the things that I really like. It's in that usable range for a large light. This was pushing it. This was a little bit bigger than I would want. It was bigger than, well, as you can see over here, compared to the Polarian PH50 with the battery cap that's not screwed all the way back in here. Alright, and you'll see that one in the beam shots as well on Candle Power forums. But let's just look at the apertures here of these two lights. You can see that the RC40 is actually larger than the SR90 head, which in turn is larger than the SR95. The newest version of the Olight actually got smaller, but the LED itself got brighter. If we look at it compared to a Polarian, you can see that's a pretty small reflector. It's only 72 millimeters reflector. So you can see that you do have to have or tolerate a light that is larger in diameter. The RC40 over here on the right is a much more flexible platform. It has 5 different modes that you can run the light. The Polarian PH50 here it's a single mode. It's an HID. You turn it on, you get full output for about 50 minutes or so in this one, and then you're out. You got to throw in another battery pack. So if you're using this out in the field, you're going to have to carry several batteries with you if you were on the kind of, I'm going to just say, operation that you had to go throughout the night and keep this light running constantly. We've got a little bit more flexibility here in the Polarian Abyss Dual S. It's a 2-mode. You can see low and high here. You'll see that in the previous reviews of this light. You can run it at 30 watts or you can run it at 45 watts. At 30 watts, you've got about 90 minutes of runtime, and again, HID as opposed to LED. So with an HID, you're going to typically, the general rules, you're going to get much better throw. They're capable of throwing light further. It's got a higher surface brightness of the arc as compared to the diode in the LED here. So huge flexibility with the LED light as compared to the HID light, and that's where I really enjoy LED. I'm really gravitating towards LED lights these days because they can be so compact and have so much output, like this 3500 lumen night core here. So the things that those lack, though, are the throw. They just don't have the throw capability that this has. So when you're down range of this light, you know it. It's an impressive beam. Price on this light retail is $369. I know that it's not chump change. It's not a small amount of money. But looking at the amount of light here, just the design of it, the amount of material in the light, the quality of the light, the quality of the reflectors, the centering of the LEDs is perfect within each reflector, the stainless steel bezel, the rechargeable battery pack, the charge status LEDs. I really can't find anything wrong with this light so far. Now, I've only had it for about 10 days or so. So far, I can't find anything wrong with the light. I can usually find something wrong with the light. I could maybe, as a flashlight enthusiast, complain about the battery pack, but actually in use, with me running this thing dead all the time and then having to recharge it, it's so easy just to plug in the charger here and forget about the rest. The more you use this light, the more you'll actually appreciate this style of battery system versus an individual carrier of some type. Considering the other lights that have been out there in the past and the capabilities that they offered, it seems like the performance level is continuously going up and the price is continuously going down or staying the same. When the O-Light came out, for instance, I think that was up in the $450 range, and I think the SR95 still retails for right up there at $400 or $450. So if we look at things equally, there's not really lights out there like the RC40. So that's the thing to point to first, is that there's really nothing else out there matching its performance. And when I'm talking about that, I'm talking about the weight, the size, the ability to run constantly in turbo, the overall output at 3500 lumens, the various levels and so forth. It's really the complete package. You guys know from watching my videos that it's rare for me to not have a single issue with a flashlight, but I have no complaints about this light. I like the design, I like how it carries. I don't know if I mentioned weight. It was 2.88 pounds as compared to the TK70 over here, which is 3.06 or 3.06 pounds. The little TK75 is 1.54 pounds. So, you know, maybe, you know, I've got both of these lights. I own them both now. So when it comes to, you know, deciding which one I'm going to carry, well, it's going to be a hard pick. The throw of this light is amazing, and I used to carry my HID, my Polarians all the time. So in that regard, this light really isn't larger, especially if we consider it lengthwise here with the PH50. It's the tube's actually smaller. And so if I would carry this light, a single mode light, why not carry a light the same size that offers me a lot more flexibility? So yeah, I could probably see myself taking this light on certain short trips, but on a longer trip, I'm probably going to stick to this or something even smaller. It just depends on what that trip consists of and how bad I need this much light and this much throw. Most of the times, I could get away with a light like this. That's got more throw than I need at 60,000 candela. A lot of times. Even the TM26, that's got 40,000 candela throw, 3,500 lumens. It's a lot of light, but it fits into a pretty small package. So it really depends on what I'm doing, but I can certainly see the mission that would call for a light like this, especially a mission with a lot of support, maybe a lot of people in the field working together for a common goal of some type. Again, you guys pick the mission, whether that's search and rescue or police work, or, you know, grabbing this, maybe this would be the searchlight in a squad car, the portable searchlight. They've got the lights mounted to the car, they've got their EDC lights and their duty lights, but sometimes you might, in a dark area, want a mega light like this, where you want to shine this down an alley and intimidate anything down that alleyway. You know, it's just going to bathe the entire area in light. I just thought of something, and this is something that I should have written down. I would like to see a little bit more tension here required to turn the light on. So you remember here on the desktop when I would, you know, pick up the light like this, and I would inadvertently, you know, hit that power switch and click it on. I'd like to be able to feel that when I put my hand there. So if it protruded a little bit more, had a little bit more force to activate, and it was made out of a rubber material, I would actually prefer that. But obviously it wasn't a thing that was big enough for me to remember and say, hey, that's a fault with the light, because I don't see it at that. I just think it might be an improvement if they did something that required a little bit more force. I don't know how many pounds of force this is. I could guess. I would say it's maybe 2.5 to 3 pounds of force required to push on that button. Alright guys, I wanted to demonstrate a waterproofness test here. This is, I've done some other ones on the light and it did really good, but I always like to show you guys and make you part of it. So this one's live here on the same night as the desktop review, or as live as it can be, I guess. We'll get to you later. Now, last time I put a flashlight in the fish tank, I was actually reprimanded a little bit by one of the viewers. He had talked about how you never want to put a flashlight in a fish tank because the aluminum, the poison or something like that. And so I've got a bucket of water down here, and I'm guessing that because the flashlight is completely covered, this little Maritac is completely covered in anodizing, he must have been mistaken about the aluminum, and so he was probably referring to the little Maritac light itself is poison to the fish. So we're going to go ahead and put that one in the bucket, and we're going to go ahead and put the RC40 in the fish tank. So let's go ahead and turn this thing on here, and I'll try to position this in a way that I forgot it's too large to fit in the top of the tank. Alright, and last time I had this thing standing, there a little bit, but let's go ahead and you can see we've got all 4 LEDs blasting away in there. There's no bubbles forming from inside the light coming from the inside of the light. Bubbles will stick to anything that you put down in there. See a little bit of debris floating around in there from when it touched bottom. I'll probably have to go to the side to see the LEDs, but anyhow, this light actually sat in here running on low overnight, a few days after I got the flashlight, and miraculously all my fish are still alive. And it's never a good idea to leave the fish water on the light, so let's go ahead and clean it off real quick. And all modes still working really good. Well, there you have it, guys. I think that answers the waterproof question. There's definitely no problems there. And this is my 3rd big test on waterproofing. Never an issue with this light. Alright guys, back here on the desktop really quick, I wanted to show you that we just did get this out of the shower. You can see the water still in between the heat fins there. But I did wipe the reflector dry, and I just want to show you that there was no water ingress, even though we were blasting the corners here of that bezel. So hopefully you can see. Let me go ahead and turn it on there. no water ingress at all. The switches are still working perfectly with all the modes. Getting a little tired here towards the end of my review. The actual minutes of the review don't reflect how long it's actually taken. But hey, anyone who's stuck through this review, you're a flashaholic, you're a flashlight fan, you're somebody who cares about lights, and I do appreciate you guys watching. Because of the length of this review, if you give me a couple of days, I'm going to post a shorter review. Not that it's my new trend to do long and short reviews, but because of the length of this review and how much is required in it with the beam shots and the waterproofing and everything, I will make a shorter review. So I hope you enjoyed this one. Please leave comments. Let me know if you have any questions, and be civil. Most of my subscribers usually are. It's usually the new guy that comes onto the screen that says something unsavory. But guys, thanks a lot. If you liked the video, shoot me a like for it, would you? Take care, guys. Patriot out.